Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting of the West Haymarket JPA for Thursday, November 19th, 2020 to order. To my right is Regent Tim Clare, and joining us via Zoom is Councilwoman Tammy Ward. This is a public meeting subject to the Open Meetings Act, a copy of which is located in the back of our chambers. In terms of the process for today's meeting, the clerk will read each item on the agenda and staff will then come forward to present on that item. Public comment will be taken, and we would appreciate it if each speaker would please state their name and address for the record, and then note that testimony will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker per item. And with that, Casey, please call the first item.
The next item is approval of the minutes from the JPA meeting held October 29th, 2020.
So moved.
Moved by Claire, seconded by Ward. Is there any discussion or changes or clarifications about the minutes? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
Motion carried. 3-0. Next item, approval of October 2020 payment register and review of the October 2020 expenditure reports.
Brandon should be online.
Oh, okay. Mr. Kaufman, our finance director, is joining us via Zoom today. Over to you, Brandon.
Hello, members of the board. Thank you. So, and the October financials to present. In total, they're $950,073.01. And I'm going to highlight some of the highlights of the register were Egan Supply of $16,192.80. Those were for backpack sprayers for cleaning the arena. We have the sponsorship increment of $287,171.50. This is the second quarter payment. This was requested in advance, basically at this point, so arena could continue to make payroll. And just so you're aware too, that there is potential relief at the arena through state COVID funds. So they're currently going through the application process that should help and assist them moving forward with the state COVID funds. This is the second quarter operating increment payment of $150,000. In addition, we had various insurance payments. We had the property insurance payment of $178,317, general liability $25,755, public official bond coverage of $28,119, and those are annual payments. Then we had the DEC payment for a monthly payment of $209,165. 31% of that is paid by the JPA, and then we bill back 69% to the customers in the area. And then we had the arena maintenance of $40,054, which are various repairs maintenance throughout the building at Pinnacle Bank Arena. The largest portion of that was for basically annual support for the phone system over there. I'll pause there and see if there's any payments on or any questions in regards to the October payment register.
Any questions from members of the JPA?
No questions.
Councilman Ward, no questions from Councilwoman Ward?
Oh, thank you.
We would take public comment on this item. Unless, did you want to go over the expenditure reports first, Brandon? Or did you go through everything?
Well, I was going to just highlight real quick. Under the tab, West Haymarket Fund, Statement of Revenues, Expenditures and Changes in Fund Balance, that had the financials for the JPA through October 31st. You can see revenues of $3.7 million, expenditures of $1.9 million for a surplus of $1.8 million. So we started the year with beginning balances of $40.7 million and a current ending balance of $42.5 million. So just general statement overall in regards to the JPA finances. We are currently current on all the bond payments and will not need to rely on any type of tax levy to make those payments. The $40.7 million that we began the year with in reserves is sufficient to help us manage through any shortfalls due to COVID-19 on the revenue side. The forecast on occupation tax revenues, as you all know, has been consistent and conservative over time to ensure coverage of the bond payments as those occupation tax revenues increased. And currently, the occupation tax revenues are in line with 2029 or 18% over the original projections.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? All right. Ms. Kinsey, if you'd like to go ahead and make your public comments, please do so at this time.
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. What is the situation with the arena? There was no report this month.
We just received the October report. I think last month we reported up through September. So the October report will be in the next JPA meeting packet.
Still on deficit?
Are you talking about the arena? Yeah, I mean the arena, and I think Tom's also zooming into the call so he can speak to that as well. But you know, the arena is currently without the ability to bring in big events, not going to be able to generate as much revenue as in the past. However, they're currently looking at potential of $2 million from state COVID relief funds that could come in to help support the arena throughout our current fiscal year.
You're pretty sure you're going to get that?
My understanding at this point is it's based on an allocation base, based off of some formulas that the state has set up. So, you know, I think we're on track to receive that, and Tom has been working and submitted the application through the state to receive those funds.
Are you still getting premium seat revenues even though you don't have events?
At this point, the JPA has held off on billing for any premium seat revenues for the current fiscal year, and I think we're delaying, and we've delayed that decision on whether or not to bill entities for those.
But you don't have the money actually, huh?
No, we have not billed for the current fiscal year for the loge or the suites.
$500 or so dollars. That's in the revenue. That's what's listed in the revenue.
Yeah, and that might have been some lingering funds received or a deposit on a potential reserve for a loge moving forward.
So you're saying you have the cash, but you haven't billed for this?
No, I'm saying we have not received the cash.
In the budget as a revenue?
Yes, we budgeted revenues, and you know, as noted during the budget development and adoption, is that we knew there were going to be a lot of changes with this upcoming fiscal year due to COVID-19. So, you know, they're budgeted, but that doesn't mean they're going to be received in the current fiscal year.
But you got it.
I'm sorry, I'm not following you.
I'm not understanding. You have this money, and it's listed as a revenue. You don't have the money, or you do have the money. Is that a projection, or is that in cash in hand?
If you're looking at the West Haymarket Fund Statement of Revenues, Expenditures, and Changes in Fund Balance report, You can see on that report in the revenues, there's $9,550 that's been received. Likely, and I'd have to look into the particulars, but I believe that might be a deposit for a potential contract moving forward on a loge that came open. We have not received the bulk of those revenues.
And still no cutting of expenses, for the arena?
There's been numerous expenditures that have been cut, including a number of furloughs at the arena that have taken place to try to curtail expenditures.
Okay. I'll ask you for a list of those, okay?
Okay.
Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion on the approval of the payment register. Moved by Claire, seconded by Ward. Any further discussion? All right, please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Motion carried, 3-0. Next item, WH 20-28, resolution to approve tribute benches master plan for the West Haymarket.
Good afternoon, Lynn Johnson with Lincoln Parks and Recreation. In the JPA board packet this afternoon, there are written information about the process and the guidelines for sponsoring a tribute bench. There's also a map that depicts potential locations. If all those locations were filled, we'd have the opportunity to come back to the board to request approval of additional bench locations in the future. And I would note that there is, it's the next agenda item, but I would note that there is a request for placement of a tribute bench in this location at the north end of the Lincoln Bridge and at the east end, of the festival lot. And this is to recognize Patricia Marvin. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have this afternoon.
Thank you, Lynn. Any questions?
These are metal benches, right?
They are metal, and I can show you an example of what one of the benches looks like. Yeah, they are fabricated from welded steel, and they're powder coated, so they should be very durable. They're very heavy. they're strong, durable steel benches.
So we don't have to worry, though, and put a warning sign on it like they did on the flagpole on the Red Ryder BB gun Christmas movie?
I would hope not, yes.
Councilman Ward, do you have any questions?
No questions, just a comment to thank Director Johnson and the Foundations Department within the Parks Department for reworking this several times for us. I just really appreciate that. So thank you. No questions, Madam Chair.
At this time, if there's anyone here who would like to comment on this item, please come forward.
Jane Kinsley with Watchdogs. Mr. Johnson, you said that no taxpayer money was going into this. What if they don't last? And where does the money for the endowment come from? Isn't that taxpayer money?
The money that goes into the endowment actually comes from a portion of the funds used to sponsor the bench. So there's no taxpayer funds involved with that. If one of these benches needs to be replaced, or if it's damaged and it needs to be repaired, the Lincoln Parks Foundation manages those funds, and the proceeds from that endowment fund would be used to make that repair or to make that replacement. So again, there would be no taxpayer funds involved.
But isn't endowment fund, didn't some of that come from the JPA?
These funds would be segregated, and they're not part of the funds that are held and managed.
Where does the Parks and Recreation Foundation get its money?
Essentially, it's all private funds, and then there are some city-funded endowments that it manages. So there's no direct financial support of the Parks Foundation from the city or other public funds.
But the city kicks in something to that?
No,
No?
no.
Okay. So it's what, you solicit donations from people to have an endowment fund?
Typically, yeah, that's exactly the way, normally that's the way these work. For example, if we're doing a capital fundraising campaign, a portion of that fundraising campaign typically includes funding for an endowment, and then those private funds are directed into the endowment fund typically.
Why don't you ask for these people who buy these benches to contribute something to it?
A portion of their sponsorship price does go into the endowment
Okay.
fund. So a portion of their the funds that they're providing for the sponsorship is directed to the endowment.
So these benches don't cost $3,000?
They do not. They do not.
Okay. How much are you allowing for that?
That's a good question. Purchase price on the benches, if I remember right, is about $1,600. And the concrete varies from site to site. Some of these locations will not need concrete. Sometimes when we're doing concrete, we're probably spending about $100 or so on the concrete. The plaque that goes in the back of the bench, I think, is about $75 or so. So the total cost of the bench plus installation is about $1,800. And so there's about $2,000 or so that's going into the endowment.
1,200, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on this item from anyone in the chambers? All right. Any further questions from the board members?
Thank you.
All right, seeing none, I entertain a motion on item 5, the resolution to approve tribute benches.
So moved.
Oh, and second.
Okay, moved by Ward, seconded by Claire. Any further discussion? I'll just reiterate Councilwoman Ward's appreciation, Regent Claire's appreciation for the time you spent putting this together for us. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Motion carried, 3-0. Next item, WH 20-22, resolution to approve park bench in memory of Patricia Marvin on property generally located east of the festival parking lot at the north end of the Lincoln Bridge.
Director Johnson did already explain this item. If you have anything further to say? No? Okay, then if anyone else would like to speak to this item. Any public comment on item 6, the resolution to approve the park bench? Okay, any
Well,
questions?
I just would say, again, thanks for your patience. Yeah, I think, again, like we said in the last one, I think we got a better plan now, more direction. I want to publicly, again, thank Dan Marvin for all of his great work on, from the early outset on this arena. I've said it many times that we wouldn't be here but for Dan Marvin. He did a great job and helped us out tremendously. And so I think this is appropriate that we're honoring his mother.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, please call the, or did we get a motion? Did I get a motion?
So moved.
Did I already call for a motion in a second?
I don't think so, but
Okay.
you did now. I'll second.
All right, moved by Ward, seconded by Claire. Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Motion carried, 3-0. Next item, WH 20-32, resolution to amend operating budget for fiscal year 2020-2021 to include an expenditure of $303,830 for an environmental insurance policy.
Madam Chair, with your indulgence, could we call items 7, 8, and 9 together?
Yes, these are related items, so Casey, could you please read items 8 and 9 as well, so we can take all 3 together?
Yes, item 8, WH 20-33 is a resolution to approve purchase of an environmental insurance policy with Navigators Insurance for an amount not to exceed $297,652. And item number 9, WH 20-34 is a resolution to approve purchase of an environmental insurance policy with Beasley Insurance for an amount not to exceed $303,830.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Chris Connolly, Chief Assistant City Attorney. Now, Brandon Kaufman is shown as having time on the budget amendment, and certainly he can put in whatever he would like to say as far as the amendment is concerned. However, I'll give the board a brief background on where this is at. Since the inception of the JPA and knowing that we had brownfield situations in the JPA area, we've always had environmental insurance in the area. Back in 2010, policy for $20 million, which is both per claim and in the aggregate, was purchased back then for 200. I don't remember the exact amount, but we added on 5 years ago for an extension of part of the policy to get us to today. So the total was $436,000 is what was paid for the policy that started back in 2010. That policy is now expiring as of November 29th, and so there is need to purchase new insurance. We can't extend this any further, and Chubb, who is the insurer so far, up to this point, really doesn't want to be in this business anymore. So they did submit a quote, but it really wasn't very competitive. And so we did receive 4 other quotes for insurance, and we've narrowed it really down to two insurers. One is called Navigators, and the other one is called Beasley. Now, I previously had sent out some information, and I'm in a chart that was sort of difficult to read, so hopefully this will be a little easier to read. I'm not sure it's going to work that well, but I'll try and work with this a little bit. Chubb is on the left side here, and this is the policy that is expiring. And you can see for $20 million and $20 million also for the aggregate. Navigators is in the middle, and then Beasley, the one that we're going to recommend, is over here on the right. Most of these policies are the same in terms of the kinds of coverage that they have, although really I think we're going to find that the Beasley policy is now better than the policy that we've had for the last 10 years. They are all claims-made policies, so there's no difference there. There is a difference between Navigators and Beasley in the term. For Beasley, it's 10 years on pre-existing conditions and 5 years on new conditions. But with Beasley, it's 10 years on both. And that's an important point, because we would have the same issue on Navigators in 5 years that we had with the Chubb one, and that is that we would have to expend an additional sum of money. We're guessing it's around $80,000, but we won't really know until that time comes in about 5 years in order to extend the new conditions portion of the Navigators policy. With Beasley, we pay about the same premium, but we get 10 years on everything, so we actually will save money. The other parts of this are that there is some exclusion language that we believe is more beneficial to the JPA when we're trying to do the comparisons on the policies. And I won't spend a lot of time going through those because it gets into different kinds of chemicals and what the exclusions really mean. But this kind of coverage really is meant to cover 2 kinds of things. One is remediation in the event that the state or EPA comes in and says, you haven't done enough here, you need to do some more cleanup. And that would be a reopening of what's already been done, because we do have no further action letters really for most of the JPA area. So we think that's really very unlikely. So that's one part of it. The other part of it, though, are tort claims. In the event that there was a vapor that somehow got out or somehow the plume got exposed and caused injury to somebody, that's where we would have concern. That's what this policy covers, and that's really the bigger piece of what environmental insurance like this is meant to cover. And so that's the reason why we have such large numbers as $20 million, because it's meant to cover those kinds of risks. Now, one difference between Navigators and Beasley, there's a figure here of $2.5 million. This is for additional defense limits. So outside the $20 million that Navigators offers, they also include $2.5 million for defense costs. With Beasley, their defense costs are included in the policy limits. So one advantage there for Beasley really is that if for whatever reason we exceeded $2.5 million, there's still more money there to use for that. If we tapped out, and it's hard to imagine that we would tap out $2.5 million in legal fees, but if it happened, it would
be a
create
good
problems
thing
on
in
what
my
we would have
business.
to pay for. What's that? You'd want to be the attorney doing that, right? And I understand. So in any event, so we feel like that's an advantage for Beasley. In terms of the rest of the, going back to this then for a moment. So the policy premium for Beasley is this $300,000. Now the resolution talks about $303,000. That includes if we were to take the option of TRIA, T-R-I-A, and that is a federal act which, if we purchase this additional premium, would enable Beasley in this case to be reimbursed from the federal government if there was some catastrophic terrorist attack that destroyed the West Haymarket, and at some point Beasley has insufficient funds to pay off all the claims for that, then they would get reimbursed by the federal government. Okay, for $2,900, we don't think it's worth it, and we've been advised, recommended, don't take it. So the resolution has a higher number than we actually need, but this is what the premium is going to be. Now, on the last part of this is, we spent a lot of time yesterday with Board Member Claire discussing the policies, and one of the things that we determined is that we do have an obligation, a contractual obligation, to provide the insurance that we already have, or the levels that we already have. The contract language talks about how we cannot modify or change the language or change the policies. I was going to try and find the exact language. We cannot alter the policy, and so that would restrict us in what we can do. WHJPA shall not cancel the environmental insurance policy nor materially alter the environmental insurance policy to a redeveloper's detriment without redeveloper's written consent. So what I'm going to ask the board to do is to take the recommendation of the Beasley Insurance and approve that. We will still try and talk with the redevelopers in the Canopy Park development, which is where this language came from. And
Lot 4.
that's block 4,
Block
yes. And see if they would be willing to allow us to do it for a slightly lower level. We think there's some justification for that. The exact amount, we're not sure where that would end up. We've had some discussions about it, and we'll have some more. But our recommendation is to take the Beasley Insurance for $300,000 and to approve the budget amendment to reflect this. This was a process that we had started back in September, but it wasn't in time to get it into the budget process. And we provided a lot of information to Aon, who's our insurance consultants. And it just took a while to get to the point where we had something to compare. And so we didn't get this information until last Thursday. So with that, if you have any questions on the insurance, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Connolly?
Well, I appreciate the time that you spent going through this. We have a fiduciary duty to the taxpayers with respect to being good stewards with the money. We also have a fiduciary duty as to our role in ensuring and protecting the asset that we have, i.e. the arena and the surrounding areas. We beat that up, the insurance contracts up, and put them back together. And then when you have, and then you considered the cleanup efforts that we've done, the sale of the property, and while that all factors in, you look back and you also see this tort issue that can come back from an environmental standpoint and bring us all back into the equation. And that would include like, prior landowners on this, Burlington, for example. So we have an obligation on that. We also have a contractual obligation with some of our partners that Chris was speaking about. So I think from an insurance standpoint, while I don't like to be insurance rich, I think this is what we have to do. So I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the team, explaining it to a knucklehead like me that doesn't always get things.
Well, that's all right. They were fair questions, and we tried to answer them the best we could.
Thank you. Any questions from you, Councilman Ward? I don't want you to feel...
No.
Okay, great. At this time, if there's anyone who would like to speak to these items, 7, 8, or 9, we're talking about all three, and we'd welcome any testimony.
I'm going to come back here, or shall I be over there?
Sure, if you want to go ahead.
All right. Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. So who evaluated that you needed $20 million coverage?
Aon Consulting is the Aon insurance consultants, or the consultants for the city. We've retained them for a lot of years. They've been around for quite a while. They give us the information, and they give us their best thoughts on it, and then we as staff look at it and compare it, and we're making this recommendation.
Okay. And the city's picking up $50,000 if there is a claim, is that right?
The
Deductible?
The deductible under the policy is $50,000. It would depend on how the claim is being made, whether it's being made against the JPA or the city.
Okay. And it looked like when I looked at the resolution, there was a tail back. Are you saying that you had a policy and now it came due and you've decided to buy this other one because it was better? Or is there a coverage in this policy for prior years?
The current policy is expiring on November 29th, so it won't be there at all after November 29th. So we needed to buy a new one.
Okay.
And the current insured gave us a very uncompetitive proposal because they really don't want to be in this part of the business anymore.
Okay. So you had coverage and you're just terminating that and getting another one?
It's like your car insurance. It's going to run out, then we get a new one and go forward
Right.
from there.
But there's no tail end for past years?
No, this
As
is
of
claims,
this day.
this is claims-made insurance, so
Okay.
it's based on when the claim is made. Now, if somebody were to make a claim between here and November 29th, today and November 29th, and then we bought the new insurance, well then Chubb, which is the current insurer, would still have to cover it.
Pick it up, okay. Okay, and so you had a recommendation for this amount and these policies, or you chose the policies yourself?
Well, we're making a recommendation for the Beasley policy at $20 million, both for claim and in the aggregate, and for the premium of the $300,000.
Okay. And 500, so for the two of them, it's like $500,000. What,
We're not buying two.
you aren't?
No, because we were down to trying to figure out which one we wanted to do, but we also needed to get things on the agenda. So I've listed both of them on the agenda, but they're only gonna pick one. They're not gonna pick both.
Okay.
So-
Which one is that?
Well, it's up to the board, but we're
Oh.
recommending that they do the Beasley one
Beasley, oh, okay, only,
only.
okay.
Correct.
And so that's like 300,000 or something. Do you know what fund that will come out of, or is,
Brandon would have to answer that question,
Okay.
but I mean, I think it just comes out of the general operating budget for the JPA.
okay, okay, thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to these items?
So for purposes of this, then, just clarification, will we take each one up individually, and we would vote to approve 7, which expands the budget to enable us to pay the premium, decline on 8, or do we just pull it off the agenda?
I would say vote to decline it.
Okay, and then 9, we'd pick that up.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you for that. All right. Any further staff questions from members of the board? All right. Seeing none, entertain a motion for item 7.
Well, one other comment,
Yeah.
if I may, please.
Sure.
Frank, thank you for your work on this cleanup. I think the insurance that they talked about, the great job, obviously, that you did. So thank you for your work on this, too. That's all.
All right.
Oh, motion, yes, I'll move.
Second?
Moved by Claire, seconded by Ward. Any further discussion on item 7? Okay, please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Motion carried, 3-0.
All right, and now item 8. We'll take a motion on item 8.
Now we move to, how do you move on this?
Move to deny,
I would suggest you move to approve, but then just everyone.
Vote no.
vote against it.
Okay.
I could not quite hear that.
The suggestion from Mr. Connolly was to move approval, but then have the board vote against it.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Claire, seconded by Ward. Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
No.
Ward?
No.
Claire?
No.
Item failed, 3-0.
And now on item 9, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Claire, seconded by Ward. Any further discussion on item 9? All right, hearing none, please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Item carried, 3-0. The next meeting date will be Thursday, January 28th, 2021 at 2:30 p.m. here in council chambers.
Okay. That year 2021 is sounding pretty good right about now. Glad to see that number.
Favor to get out of 2020.
Yeah. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Claire, seconded by Ward. Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
How about that?